To begin with, the very first session for the day, titled Reflections from My Travel to Leh in Ladakh. A very brief about this session. Ladakh, a land of high passes, stunning landscapes, and heartwarming people, has a magic that's hard to resist. Drawn by its raw beauty, unique wildlife, and the kindness of its people, Miss Sujatha Padmanabhan found herself returning again and again to this cold desert paradise. Through years of working with various organizations on education-related projects, she explored Ladakh up close, its valleys, villages, and vibrant culture. Out of these journeys were born 5 delightful children's storybooks, each inspired by the land and its people. Our speaker, Ms. Sujatha Padmanabhan, has authored many children's books published by Kalpavriksha, Ekalavya, SLCIT, and Pratham. Bambu, the donkey who would not budge, won her the Hindu Young World Good Books Award in 2016. Sujatha works with Kalpavriksha as an environment NGO professional and has been involved in developing local specific environment education programs and resources for children and teachers. She currently coordinates publishing books for children. Radha loves being outdoors, watching birds and other creatures, and spending time walking in forests and mountains. All right, everyone, let's join Sujatha Padmanabhan as she takes you behind the scenes, sharing the stories, inspirations, and adventures that shaped her books. The session will be followed by a Q&A by Ms. Monisha Raman, author of Highlands of Yore and a GLF team member. Let's welcome the speaker onto the stage. Over to you, Ms. Sujatha Padmanabhan, for the session.
Thank you very much. And Sangmala Jule, which is greetings to all of you in Ladakhi. I'd like to start off by saying that my first trip to this region, Ladakh, was in 2001. I had initially planned a 2-week holiday to the region, but that soon got turned into a month's working trip. And this was on the invitation of an organization that had just started services for disabled people in the region. I was a trained special educator, but at that time I had moved to Pune and was with Kalpavriksha. And when the invitation came, of course, I jumped with joy and I didn't complain at all. So that's actually what started me on this long journey with the region. Also, I think I was lucky because for me, one opportunity led to another. So while I started with this organization in disability work, after about 2-3 years, I got an invitation to do a stint with SECMOL, and subsequently a collaboration with the Snow Leopard Conservancy India Trust. That was quite a long collaboration, and it continues in some form of the other even today. Just a little bit about the stint with SECMOL, because I just thought it might interest this audience. The organization managed to convince the Hill Council at that time that the region needed localized textbooks for primary school children. Up to then, the textbooks that were being used and being read by primary children were those that were developed for the rest of India. And if you looked at it, you would have realized how irrelevant it was to the lives of the children. Just as an example, it taught children that the way you do your bit for the environment is remember to switch off the fans when you leave the room. So fans in Ladakh, absolutely children couldn't connect to a number of things in the textbooks. For example, wildlife mentioned tigers, lions, peacocks. Trees were coconut trees. no mention of the juniper, the snow leopard, the black-necked crane, etc. So there are many, many incongruencies there. So under this project, I was part of a team that worked on grade 4 and grade 5 EVS textbooks. And we actually managed, it was probably the first example, I'm not too sure, but the first example of government schools using a textbook that was developed just for one district. It was a lay-based textbook for primary schools. And it was used till as late as 21, 22. Now they've reverted back to mainstream books. The work that I did with the Snow Leopard Conservancy India Trust, initially it was a request to develop a program for children in government schools again, but in villages where they had seen some conflict with wild animals, especially the snow leopard. So we were with their team. They had local people hired for the program. We developed a lot of educational material, activities, etc., indoors, outdoors, a whole curriculum for conservation. And ultimately, after a few years, it culminated in producing a kit with all the material. My colleague Yashodhara is here. She was also part of helping putting the kit together. Just to make it available to anybody in the region who wants to do some conservation education work, because Ladakh is a large place, and SLC realized that no way they would be able to cover the entire region. So the work with these three organizations actually gave me the opportunity, like she said in the introduction, to travel to different parts of Ladakh and stay in very many homes, Ladakhi homes with families, see Ladakhi life fairly up close. Also managed to see quite a few of the iconic wildlife species as I traveled. And as a result, there were moments in my travel which inspired me. There were moments, of things that I experienced, which when I reflected on them, I felt that, they needed to be told as stories for children. And that's how each of these books got done. So I'll just share briefly the stories behind each of the books. The first one that I did was titled Chuskid Goes to School. It was on the request of the organization that worked with disability. Addresses the issue of physical access for anybody who, you can quite imagine in a terrain like Ladakh, if a child who uses a wheelchair lives on one side of a stream and the school is on the other, it's a huge challenge to get across. Kids there, able-bodied kids, just jump across rocks and get across. I've seen them carry their school bags, the older kids carrying the younger ones and jumping across with great ease. But a child who has a physical disability, it's a near impossibility. And in one of the villages, the community came together and built a bridge across the stream just to enable one child to go to school. So the story is, of course, fictional, but it was around this one incident. Just a word about community relationships in Ladakh. There's actually an interesting system that they have, a traditional system. It's called Faspoon, where families are related. They're not blood relations, but say about 6 to 8 families are connected in a way that they help each other out. It's a reciprocal relationship. So if 6, 8 of us are Faspoon relations, then if one family member has, say, an issue, there's a death, or somebody is very ill, the other First Spoon members come to help. Also in times of joy. So if there's a wedding, Fast Spoon members come to just take over, helping with the celebration. So it's a very beautiful system that still exists. The second one, called titled Ghost of the Mountains. This actually was inspired by a particular incident where you can see this young lad in that photograph. That's Rigzin, who's also the protagonist in this story. So Rigzin went to his village one day and discovered that a family, and they're here in this photograph, had lost all their livestock in the enclosure because a snow leopard had managed to enter. And what the family had done was to create a small little hole just so that they could conveniently throw in bundles of dried alfalfa into the room. And then they covered it with a plastic sheet. But a hungry snow leopard, just easily ripped apart the plastic sheet and entered the enclosure. So the story is basically about how Rigzin manages to convince very angry villagers, naturally very angry. The family has lost all its livestock. So, and how he plays a role in saving the life of this one animal. This one, Bambu, the donkey who would not budge. This was a time when we were doing a program in Markha village, which is within the Hemis National Park. Markha village, it takes 2 days to reach the village from the nearest road in those days. And we would trek from the village of Skew the second day to the village of Markha, and it was a really long trek. It would take 9 to 10 hours. And at Skew, we would hire pack animals to carry our luggage. That particular year, we'd hired donkeys. And we were trekking along, and it was post-lunch that Padma, a young girl who owned the donkeys and who came with us, she told us that when darkness falls, when it gets dark, she said, one of my donkeys will stop walking. It's not going to move. And that's when we discovered, quite by surprise, that the donkey had night blindness. So, there was nothing that we could do. We were really far away from Markha. And sure enough, night fell. We were still about 3 hours trekking distance. And there was panic because we had just 2 small tents with us. We were too many adults to fit into those tents, including 2 donkeys. So we were just wondering how we would cope with the cold in the night when Jigmet Dadul, who works with the Snow Leopard Conservancy, suddenly jumped up, opened his backpack, pulled out a head torch, put it on the donkey, switched it on, all was well. So I was really such a lovely creative idea that I thought it should be You don't have immediate solutions to little issues that you might face, and the local people have a knack, I think, which we have lost. Urbanites, our lives are also taken care of. We've lost the knack of finding, little solutions to problems. So, that's okay. I'll continue. If it comes on, it comes on. It's okay. The next book that I did is called It's Me, Ali. It was published by Eklavya, published in 2024. So, let's see if you can move it, otherwise I'll just continue. Yeah. So, SLC had decided to do a book on food in Ladakh. So we were a team again who worked on it. And one of the chapters that was assigned to me and another colleague was to interview elderly people in different villages in the region to figure out what they remember of food when they were young, their food memories. So this took me to a region in Nubra Valley, a few villages which are actually along the line of control, shares a border with Pakistan. And as we were interviewing elderly people for this work, out came stories, heartbreaking stories of separation. Siblings separated, cousins separated, parents and children separated overnight. Because in the 1971 war, these 4 villages came back, became a part of India. So overnight, earlier they were in Pakistan, 71 war, overnight they became part of India. So I just felt that maybe children, through a story older children should be exposed to the realities when 2 nations go to war. These are things we don't think of often. We often think of the Jawans who get killed, but local people also have a really tough time. And the last book, again published in 2024, A Roof for Norbu. This was commissioned by the Snow Leopard Conservancy. They wanted a storybook for children, and a story which would highlight a positive conservation action by a local community. So I had read a little bit about how the Pala's cat mother had actually taken refuge in a storeroom to have her kittens, and how the youth, especially in that village, had taken pains to see that the mother and the kittens were safe. So the artist Laboni and I traveled to Hanle village, which is in Changtang, the eastern part of Ladakh, and spent 6 days there interviewing people. And I'd like to specially mention 2 young people who are wonderful naturalists, Padma Ishi and Kesang Dorje, and who are doing everything that they can in this distant village to protect the wildlife that they have. And the region actually has quite a bit of wildlife facing tremendous developmental pressures at the moment. So people in SLC and local people like Padma Ishi and Kesang are actually quite worried about the future of their region. I think I'll end with that.
Thank you, Sujatha. We have just about time for one question, and then we'll move on. So especially in Roof for Nobu, that is shortlisted for our awards, and in all of your work, you make it a point to include the local names, be it the landscape or the animals. For example, Pala's cat is Taksram, otter of the mountains. So my question is, there's all this wisdom that's encoded in oral history, oral languages, and now with the children who are learning languages that are not their mother tongue, and especially when those languages don't have the script or a written form, and they're forced to learn languages, to fit in with the rest of the crowd. The kind of, loss of knowledge that happens, and I know it because I grew up that way, and I knew the distance that comes between the landscape and the community and you when you adopt another language. So how do you think these gaps can be filled? And especially when literacy is judged by when you know to read and write in another language.
Yeah. So the thing with languages in Ladakh is that up to the 90s, the medium of instruction in government schools was Urdu. It was part of the J&K state, so it was Urdu. And almost all the children struggled with Urdu. And when they came to class 8 and 9, they suddenly had to shift to English because those who needed to do the class 10 exam needed to do it in English. So it was quite messy with a lot of children struggling. Ladakhi is written in a very classical way, and in the discussions that happened with the scholars, the educationists, teachers, education department, etc., there was absolutely no agreement. I mean, there was a lot of resistance to allow the Ladakhi language to be written. It is written, but written and used as a medium of instruction up to class 10. The colloquial language, which would have been easy for children. The classical, anything that's written in the classical style, even the teachers can't understand it. It is really difficult. So at that time, because of this difference of opinion, everybody apparently in a meeting took a decision that the next best option for a medium of instruction would be English. And that is what it is today. Of course, I think children hear a smattering of English because of tourism. The other languages that are taught as languages, there's Hindi that's taught, Urdu is also an option. Ladakhi is also an option. So what the options are, I think just depends on, I mean, the schools take the decision depending on ease of availability of teachers and all that. But where erosion of knowledge is concerned, I think, of course, language is important, but I think in Ladakh, the bigger issue is something that a lot of rural areas are facing, smaller towns are facing, because many children are leaving rural areas to come to residential private schools in and around Leh to study. And if you take the nomadic Changpa people, there are residential schools set up by the government for them. So a lot of the children in Leh are actually going to residential schools in Bangalore, if they can afford it, Bangalore, Delhi, because they feel even the Leh schools are not good enough. So I think this is what is, taking children away from their homes and their lifestyles. I know one of the things that is being done, but that's at college level, because a lot of youth go out to study. Jammu, Delhi, Bangalore, Srinagar are the preferred options for youth. So one of the things that SLC does is a program every year, every July, for college students where the entire focus is on Ladakh, and then the students go and stay in a village. Apparently, some of them say that this is the first time they're even visiting a Ladakhi village. So these are college students who may have lived their life in Leh. So that's one of the initiatives. There are other initiatives with children where there are, I know at least of 2 organizations that are trying to help younger children through stories linked to the region. One actually is doing a lot in Ladakhi Stories, an organization. But I think the bigger threat is the education system.
Thank you, Sujatha. We'll open it up to the audience. So are there any questions? Okay, I'll go ahead with my next one. So tourism, Ladakh is a pristine landscape and it is very inviting. And we know that tourism it helps economically, but on a fragile ecosystem like that, to have bunches of tourists come with their motorbikes and the photographs, and can you take us a bit more on how it actually impacts the ecosystem and people too, though it helps economically in some way?
Yeah, so tourism, I think that just the sheer numbers tell part of the story. The population in Ladakh is about 2.75 lakhs now, the entire region, Leh district and Kargil district. And in a good year, which is a year where there's no unforeseen incident, political upheaval, or there's no calamity, no major natural calamity, the number of tourists who descend on the region is 3.5 to 5 lakhs. And that's like double the population of the entire region. Many of them come to Leh. The Leh population is 37,000. So numbers, I think, itself will tell part of the story. what the natural resources, there's a strain on it, there's pollution, garbage management, there's lots that needs still to be done with garbage. With animals and wildlife, I'll just highlight one incident. It's a practice that started in I heard about it in 2010, and apparently it still continues. Tourists who go to Pangong, and Pangong is like a favorite destination, I think almost everybody goes there, stop at a particular grassy meadow to feed marmots. And it's actually very disturbing and very shocking. This is a creature that's really shy, and the natural behavior is to run into the burrow the minute there's any sign of any threat. This is a creature now, you can see photographs on the net of people sitting down on the grassy patch, holding out a banana and feeding the marmot by hand. And social media posts encourage people, say, if you're going there, do carry cakes, do carry biscuits, because you can feed marmots. So people are even making it worse by advising other tourists about how you can feed it. I must also admit that the taxi drivers who are all local are, I don't know why, but they're not in a position to say no and resist this request of outsiders. So,
yeah, one last question. So with development being pitted against environment now, in the course of the political discourse, that's the way it is now. So since you first visited Ladakh, have you seen any changes, drastic changes, governmental policies that have impacted the people?
I think, in all fairness, I think the bigger threats are yet to come after Ladakh has become union territory. I think we should actually watch the next few years. There have been changes that I've seen, definitely, but the scare of big corporations coming in and setting up industry, that is very real now. That didn't happen. Even if big hotels, and there are some really big hotels that have mushroomed up in Leh, there are at least still locally owned. They're all locally owned. And otherwise, there are homestays in the region. But with the current scenario, in fact, just this morning, I just read a little bit of news where they've just taken the decision that all projects up to 20 crores will now, for Ladakh, will be sanctioned by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So no longer the LG, but anyway, the LG is an outsider. No longer the DC, no longer the Hill Council members. So the autonomous Hill Council members who are all from Ladakh, who had a say in what developmental activities, had a say. After it became a UT, their power was going down. That seems to have gone. That is today's news. So I mean, it's a fragile environment, already threatened with a lot of issues. But I think the Ladakhis are very justified in their fears of what's going to happen to their region if they don't have a say in what they allow and what they don't allow.
Thank you, Sujatha. Thank you for taking us through this beautiful landscape.
Thank you so much, Monisha, for those wonderful questions. And yes, definitely thank you, Ms. Sujatha, for shedding light about your experiences to our audience. As a token of appreciation from the team GLF, I request Manisha to kindly present a memento to our speaker. And yes, can we please put our hands together for this wonderful session? A very good start to the 5th edition of Green Literature Festival. Thank you so much.